smoking, that was the big thing back when, and
Yeah.
then when pot came in, you know, you could smell it. I'll tell you, one of the biggest shocks of my life was, I was putting on Oklahoma, and there were 3 female leads in that. And the 3 female leads had sort of an independent study with me, and I left the room to go and get something, and I came back and I could smell it. And they were over by the window. I didn't say a word. I said, "Follow me." I went down to the principal's office and I told him what had happened. He made them call their parents right in front of him and me.
Because we're in high school and we know stuff, you know, we're pretty grown up. Please subscribe and like our channel. Let's just see if they pulled anything off. How brave or daring are you? You're going to be out in the world real soon, you know. Welcome to episode 5. So you're looking at a celebration. In '61, we have a space center that launched a rocket into the stratosphere. But by '69, we landed on the moon! The moon! If I told you that 2 20-year-olds are sitting in a garage in California about to change the world and the way it operates, would our high school kids care? Do they have time to care about that? If you just take a moment to remember your youth, what's on your mind? School, sports, friends, or the new girl that just moved in? Let's take a ride. You're a teenager, and did you go to the dances?
Yeah, I mean, I liked to dance when I was a kid, and there was high school dances all the time. So my cousin and he had 2 buddies out of Ann Arbor, and they had a small band. They were the same age as me. So anytime there was a high school dance at high school in South Lyon, you know, they would let me get him to come. You know, that was in the early mid-'60s. So, you know, the Stones were just coming in, the Beatles were just coming in, you know, and that was like, I loved all them guys from the get-go, you know. Yeah, him and his buddies played with Seeger a few times because Seeger was out of Ann Arbor, and Seeger was just a guy, you know. Yeah, of course Bob Seeger did, he still is. But I can remember going there, but I remember going to see Ted Tucci when he was really nothing, you know, just a band.
Yeah, well, it was mostly teenagers that were hanging out about the time we were over there too. My girlfriends all worked at A&W in South Lyon, and over in Northville they worked at the A&W, and one worked at Cloverdale's in Northville. Well, we'd see the cops, but you know, we didn't do anything to cause any attention. So my group of girls were not that kind of, let's say we didn't get caught if we did something wrong. We did a couple of things, but we didn't do mean or destructive things.
I always think of a good coach as somebody who gave you a good lesson that you literally could feel later on in life. You know what I mean? You remember their inspiration.
Coach Thomas, Bill Thomas, who's still around, was just phenomenal. He had us prepared for every game because Coach Rocco, Coach Davidson, Phil Davidson would go out and scout the next team that we were going to play. He was just really, he was a role model for me. Lee Donnelly, my track coach, was Steve's track coach also. Phenomenal guy. His teaching was, he taught history, and he didn't teach it in a traditional way. And he would sit there and he would laugh and say, no, Showerman, no, you can't do that. And he was great. He would call me up on a Sunday and say, hey, I'm going to come down and we're going to pole vault. You have time? But I said, sure, Coach, I'd love to be there. So I'd go down and he would help us, and he would show me with a rock tied to the bottom of a string, and he would move it, and he'd say, "See how that rock flips up?" He says, "That's how your legs have to go up. When you bend the pole, you gotta flip those legs up, and then turn around, and you're gonna be on the other side with your hands up like this, and you're not gonna knock the bar off." He had me glue something to the bottom of the heel of my shoe that I would drive into the ground before you high jump. So he said, "This will allow you to stop and not slide." God, yes, he ran track. He ran at Western Michigan University. Oh yeah, he ran against, big black guy that went to the Olympics.
Well, actually, when I was in high school, it was more about group activities. I mean, there were people who did, boy-girl dates, and, were couples and boyfriend-girlfriend, but, you'd go to a school dance where you would go with your friends, and then you'd maybe dance with a boy, or, you'd get together. But then when it was time to leave, you'd leave with your friends.
Right.
You wouldn't leave with the boy.
Right.
So, high school socialization was really more of a group thing for me anyway. After school activities were a big part of the social life.
That was not a problem. In fact, that class of 70, Rick Fike, David Brandon, that whole bunch, we met them at Tony's barbershop before football started and zipped them all. Didn't like it. Some of them didn't like it, but they did it.
Okay, so start with the Bayball guy.
Babel would loft a pass high and deep. And Donnie Schwark, who was a sprinter, could run under him. And so we came close or beat teams that we shouldn't have. And although the first year I was here, we were 1-8, I believe. And the next year we won 2 before they started playing decent football. But anyway, then Brandon became the quarterback. Schwark was a senior. They were coming right at him.
There was one guy, and his name was Lowell Burgess. He, athletically, I couldn't believe it. Just nice guy, straight A student, bright wasn't the word. He was a exceptional athlete in 4 sports. This guy was built like, he was just muscle. One of his talents was he was a feeder. He would feed the basketball. And I had my finger up all the time. So the reason I averaged 18 points a game was because he fed me. He fed me the ball. And then we're going to a class reunion. He was there. He says, "You got to remember, Steve." He was from the South, Kentucky. He always had this drawl. "Steve, y'all got to remember, I'm 2 years older than you are." "What?" He says, "I was almost 20 when I graduated."
Was he kidding you?
No. They lost the records, the school burned down, and they moved up from Kentucky to Michigan. And I had one terrible year of football because I was skinny. Turned sideways. I don't think I weighed 135 pounds, 6'3" when I was 13.
Yeah.
So we're running back punts. So the ball is kicked and the punter or the guy runs and he said, "You're supposed to tackle this guy." Well, guess who the guy was? His name was Paul Underhill. He was an unbelievable football player. He played for the University of Missouri. Then he played for professional ball in Canada. He was 6'2", built and he hit me. I don't know how high I went in the air. I said, "That's it. This isn't my sport." I quit.
Yeah.
I was better at basketball than I was at football.
Went to prom together that year. He took me to mine. too.
Okay. And then what did you do when he had his prom the next year?
The next year we went to the prom, but he really liked another girl.
Thomas.
I said it put a strain on her relationship.
I can
with her
imagine.
being in college. All these thousands of other boys, I know it's hard on her. We were meant to be.
Know that in Southline there was not that much going on socially. Friday nights during football and basketball season, you either went to the football game or the basketball game or what was going on. We didn't have our own cars. And so a lot of Friday nights were like that. And if you dated, you met and maybe went to Zeke and Judy's afterwards or Jimmy's. Or if we went to a show, it was in Ann Arbor.
Oh,
That
you
was
didn't
the
go to
only-
your own theater?
No, there weren't that many. Well, and plus
Town.
high school. You still had this, little romances going on.
We used to go up. I don't know if Bill was mentioning this, but there was a little place up in Brighton. It was on a storefront. It was like the size, of a small grocery store size, but they had converted it into what they called a teenage nightclub. Of course, nobody was old enough to drink, and there was pop and that kind of stuff and snacks, but they would bring bands in. And that was really our first experience with bands. But as Bill said, the Amboy Dukes, which was Ted Nugent, saw Ted Nugent and the Amboy Dukes there many times. Mitch Ryder was there.
Jump up, get it.
He had a brother named Mark Ryder. He would bring his band in. There was another local called SRC, Scott Richard Case. But Bob Seeger, the first time I ever saw him was a venue in Northville, which was actually Northville's old high school, and they called it the Cavern. It would turn into the Cavern on Saturday night. And Bob Seeger sang at the Cavern.
Wow.
So, he was Bob Seeger, but it was before he was Bob Seeger. I mean, it was, he's playing high school gyms at the time. Bob Seeger was a pretty cool guy.
Realize that
Right
Mitch
now, but-
Ryder lives here in South Lyon.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've learned that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have learned that.
Band played in our basement, and bless my parents' heart, they put up with it for quite a few hours.
Because we had little babies upstairs.
Yeah.
I mean, the drums alone.
Oh, the drums alone.
Oh my
And the
God.
neighbors didn't complain. Eddie Gores was in it. I don't know if you would. Larry Boring was in it, but he lives out east
Okay.
now. Anyways, I had him at my house for a party in the basement.
That we heard many stories of they got pulled over, they had alcohol, but the alcohol got poured out and they were taken home and told their parents, and that's where it went. And
It was more of an accountability thing.
yes,
I'm going to give you a break.
I'll give you a break. Yeah, and I didn't go to too many dances. I went to a Sadie Hawkins dance.
Yes, we did that.
Uh,
Were you taking Linda to the prom by the time you were a senior?
No, I had somebody else that I took. Yeah,
I got to find out about this one.
so
Okay.
we did date once. And
Okay.
it was
Okay, girls, you're in high school. So, Diana, why don't you start first because you did this first. Give me a typical high school party. Whether it's homecoming or just a dance that they're allowing you to
A
have.
typical party was you go in a friend's house, and there was a gal in my class who lived on 2nd Street. Her backyard was the fence to the football field, so it was just easy to go to her house afterwards, and she would have quite a few parties. It was go down to the basement, there's
Yeah.
loud music
That's the
down
way
there,
mine
and
was, yeah.
dancing,
And the
and
parents were always
plenty
there.
of pop and chips, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's what we did.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
Same
In
thing.
high school. Actually, to prom my senior year, I went with just friends. Wasn't even a boyfriend. It was just a good friend. We asked the fellas, actually. We did, because it was our senior year and we were gonna go.
Yeah, I didn't go to prom, so I can't tell you about it.
Oh,
I
no.
decorated for it. I
Yeah.
planned for it.
Did you guys see? Ours was so simple. We decorated our gym,
Yeah, that's
and we
what I
had
was.
it in the gym.
That's
Sure,
what we did
we
too.
did too.
Yeah.
We did. I guess most people went out to somewhere fancy for dinner before, but we had a lot of pajama parties.
Oh, okay.
So I have lots of pajama party pictures.
Okay. What about describe a typical high school situation in the late '70s. The football team all have long hair, for
Yeah.
God's sake. You guys didn't really. It
Yeah,
wasn't a drug situation.
it was more of a hanging out. Like for instance, before school started, you'd get to school a half hour early and stand in the halls,
I know.
and just people. I mean, because it was you could go in circles. Like the girls just continuously walked in circles, and the guys hung out standing up against the walls.
And it's the 9 Mile way.
Yeah.
The one where the middle school is.
right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. It is a circle.
Yeah. My dad was livid when this happened. My sister brought home a note from the school, a permission slip to sign, giving them permission to smoke in the smoking lounge.
Making children? Giving
Yeah,
children permission?
We had a smoking lounge right at the east end of the high school. There was just a square. It was outside the building that you had a little area. It was 74, so it had to be
Did a lot of people stand out there and smoke?
Yeah. Plus, you'd smell pot on people. They'd be smoking pot out there and stuff. I know one time when I was in high school, and they took the doors off the girls' bathrooms because the girls were the ones doing it the most. Yeah.
Those darn girls.
Yeah. Right.
You can't even
Yeah.
smoke near a
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Kids would never believe that.
I want to bring up something that I think, dealing with the small town. Speaking of chief of police, our chief of police, when I turned 16, our chief of police drove out to our farm, which is a mile and a half out of town, not very far, on 10 Mile. And his name is Grant Dale. And my dad must have told him, my father was in real estate at that time. He told him that I needed to get my driver's license. No problem. I'll be out there Saturday. So he drove out, and unbeknownst to me, he comes to the door and Dad says, get in the car. You're getting your driver's license. Grant's going to take you out and get your driver's license. So I hopped in the car and got my driver's license that way.
That's how you went to the DMV?
That's the way I got my driver's license.
And I got mine, almost as unique a story. So, I guess we got permits back then. I can't remember. But my dad and mom had a boat up in Keysville, and my dad said, we're going to drive up for the 4th of July weekend, and I want you to bring the car back because they were going to be gone for a couple of weeks. And of course, I didn't have my license. So because it was a permit, my birthday was July 3rd. So Grant gave him my license, and when we drove up there and it was the 3rd, my dad gave me my license and I drove back from Keysville.
Mother. Mother. Because your mom was there a long time.
Well, yes, she was, yeah. She taught French and English.
And Latin.
Latin, yeah.
Did you ever take any of your classes?
Nope. I had her for a teacher in the 7th grade, though, for English.
Did you guys have a curfew?
So when I got to the point when I was driving, it was probably about 11 o'clock then, with some exceptions. But, Mom was known as a disciplinarian, and Dad was pretty easygoing.
So before MTV, there were television dance shows for teenagers, rock and roll. They had all the big stars. And guess what? Some of these kids were on TV. Was invited to go to some Detroit semi bandstand thing. Okay, I gotta know about it.
Student council.
What is it called?
It was called Teen Town.
Okay.
It was on CKLW.
Okay.
CKLW over there, and I was one of the ones that had to speak. Questions asked of us. I don't remember what I was asked now, but it was fun. It was like American Bandstand.
Did you dance there like on Bandstand?
Sure. Yeah. And then our classmates probably watched it at home live, I bet. They asked me, and I got drilled later by some of the fellas that were there. What was the score of the football game, or how did your football team do it? Blah, I said it wrong. And
The swinging time, they had different high schools there every week. So they had some Lyon go. We went to swinging time, and I'll never forget this because Jerry Lee Lewis was there. And Jerry Lee Lewis, he used to get his feet up on the piano. Anyway, he got his feet up on the piano like he always did. I'll never forget it. It was Jerry Lee Lewis, man.
Now you know this is not everything that happened in high school, because these kids had cars, fast cars, muscle cars in the 60s. Yeah, we're gonna go drag racing.
The road for the start-finish line. I mean, they came in like vultures, man. Well, we were parked out in the cornfield.
Under the shadow of darkness. Coming up. What's going on in high school that parents don't know about? See you next Friday for episode 6. Please subscribe and like our channel. See new episodes every Friday, only on YouTube. Teachers good and bad, I had both. The best thing I ever learned was from a teacher that said, you don't need to know everything, but you need to know where to go to get the answer. And so I've considered that a very valuable lesson. I hope you took away some great lessons from good and bad teachers, because sometimes you just go, I don't ever want to be like that.